I would say. Yeah, yes, it is, and I think it's partly. My brother and I were talking about this. I think it's the whole so-called millennial generation. This is a unique, kind of demographic. In the sense, I know what I mean by that is like people, younger folks, and I missed it. I missed the crest of the wave, but 67, 68, that kind of thing. I mean, there's just a lot of changes, a lot of stuff that's just affected the whole world, the whole culture, and beyond that's a thing that's very, very deep rooted, very deep seated, and sometimes you have these generational changes, and I think this millennial generation, they have their own way of doing things, and I think we're generally free speech, private property, no drug war, that kind of thing. That's
like more like. I mean, it's got a 60s.
That's what's going. Yeah, it's going our way. I mean, really. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're tell that. And the other thing about it is that, I mean, really the serious, hardcore people are hardly even alive anymore.
Yeah.
That's that World War II generation. I mean, they forget it. I mean, but they're dying. And every more of them that die, that cohort, well, then the better the numbers are. Poll-wise, and it sounds cold, but I mean that's kind of. But things change. I don't expect to be. I'm going to be archaic within a few years and so on.
Tim, wouldn't you agree?
I'm being facetious, semi, but. But
look at on some measurement, and in some like overview of a political evolution of what's taking place, it really has been a battle of the core visions and ethics and principles of the 50s versus that developed out of the 60s. Would you agree to that to a certain extent? Like it's kind of been a, in terms of the political infrastructure and the two, the development of the two parties and who their attempts to appeal to may be?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it that deeply. I would put it more as a kind of continuity. The idea that good stuff, kind of like rises to the top, so to speak, ideas and things like that. And so, pretty much, I don't really have too many complaints. I mean, a problem I have, I don't like the way the criminal justice system is set up and the way things are done. It only to some degree creates more violence.
Yeah.
The way it's done and set up now. There's other countries that don't have these kind of problems in Western Europe, and especially, and so on. Whatever, other governments have their ways of doing things, but I'm just saying, this is not working. This is not good. It's not good.
I had a Wayne County Circuit Court judge who pretended to be interested in some of the legal arguments I was making, and then when he needed to rule on a case, went into the back and came out with a federal case. And I joked later at a seminar, you're in bad shape when you're arguing medical marijuana. The judge starts citing a federal case. Nevertheless, in all of this, for whatever the reasons, right, exactly.
Oh my God!
At the end of this, he was nice. He was as nice as he could be about it, and really secretly agreed with me and everything. And he said something to me because he's a Wayne County judge, and I say there's like a Flint judge. They see, they see the worst of it. You know what I mean? Like it's how you can become kind of hard into it. But he said something to me like I often, there's a point, I don't know if he's getting his PGT before he became a lawyer or whatever, but he made a comment about his studies and the associated violence in our culture with the war on drugs, that those two things have evolved one aside, and in other words, we are not, we've got a lot of guns in our culture, but we are the warfare.
The police preying on society.
That's what it is. It's a reflection of the Second Amendment rights and the antagonism of the evilness of that the police, not evil, I should say, the antagonism that the police have developed. Are you playing music today?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and well, brought it on themselves, in many ways. And there's always the question of what do you do with a quintessential, bad apple? I mean, all of a sudden, it's just. When I was a kid, the first time I remember the Charles Whitman, that tower at the University of Texas, just shot all those people. It's like I was maybe 10 or whatever. You hear about this, like, well, geez, oh. Well, and that's almost, at least, it's not normal. Normal is the wrong word. But this sort of thing is a kind of bacillus, and I have no words. I have no answer. To all this, what this does, it just violence begets violence. I don't know.
All right, Tim, I could talk to you. I could talk to you all night. I appreciate you
putting
up with me. Seriously, I do.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everyone.
it. Okay,
right.
We'll talk to you soon, Tim. And I know we're going to see you soon. We're going to come in and expound some more for us.
But I think March 8th. I'm thinking that's what we're talking about. Yeah, okay. All right.
Thank you, Tim. Have a great night.
Right on, man.
All right. I can talk all night. There's like a lot of political...
Did we conduct the background investigation on Mr. Beck?
Was one needed?
Well, I'm just saying. It's protocol.
Oh, for an studio appearance.
No. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Godfather.
He's good.
Fucking
He's
Godfather.
been vetted. He's fine.
All right, so it is past the 10 o'clock hour. I've got a song queued up. David Rudo is back on the thing. I didn't want. You're not getting on. I'm just gonna talk to you after. You just can't leave. I just want to.
Okay.
Well,
cool.
you want another
It's nice
commentary?
being on. It's been a minute.
What? First of all, you didn't pay for any of the minutes that I gave you. Seriously, I don't know how we let that go. There's only so much talking by a lawyer within the time frame, and we're totally broke all those rules tonight. Waived all of them. Give me a break. Just kidding. Any commentary about the law, Jeff Frazier? Okay, you got any thoughts on anything that's going on?
Yes, I'm concerned that the Michigan Facilities Licensing Act is licensing contraband, and that there's something fundamentally in conflict between the Facilities Licensing Act and the Michigan Controlled Substances Act that declares marijuana still to be contraband.
It's interesting that you say that. We've been looking at that, and there might be a journal article. But for those that may not even know this, we're talking about marijuana, the smell alone, in a vehicle by an officer is probable cause to search the vehicle. David Rudo, did you know that there was a time in Michigan when that was not the case? Did you know that?
I did not.
Do you know?
Not.
Oh, yeah.
What time? Obviously in the 1800s.
People versus Young, I think it was 1985. A stare decisis opinion, which with the intention of solidifying the Michigan state's public health code with the federal government's for that purpose. And the federal government did it to prevent the hallucinogenic effects of marijuana. And at that moment when they came up with these conclusions, it had not been this thing that they're talking about as its danger. Nothing had changed about the plant. It just became policy driven into something that's so dangerous that its smell alone would justify it. And in a stare decisis opinion, that all changed. Smell became, and then they followed with Kesmeric. Jeff, keep going. Jeff, keep going. He's still talking. I interrupted him.
Yeah, but in 1997, the Michigan Supreme Court said smell was not probable cause again. It's 1997. That was People versus Taylor. It's Michigan Supreme Court, a 4-3 decision.
And that was overruled by?
Kesmeric in the year 2000, which was a 5-2. We'd lost Mallet and Archer at that point. And Angler replaced it a couple, with Taylor and who was the other guy. So we got a couple bad judges in
Boyle?
there. Yeah.
Bad judges in the Michigan Supreme Court? Never heard of it.
Clifford Taylor.
So there was a time before that. And what Jeff speaks of is, and it's interesting because there's all these, because there's a point where there's a couple appeals that were denied, where the Court of Appeals is like, okay, we might even agree with the crazy improper appellant who, gets to argue his case for what, like it's that kind of opinion. Like, okay, like we're going to take away your writing privileges from jail. We get it. We might even agree with you that cannabis is not a Schedule I, but we are not going to declare it as such when the legislature has it, and it's for them to do it. There may be a time it's calling, laid out there. And I mean, nothing changed.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't see the courts.
Have you argued?
I don't see the courts going along with anything that limits the amount of cases that are going to come into the court.
But have you argued that yet? Where was I that I argued that? Let me tell you, they were like, I know, we're at City of Wayne.
I'm just saying.
Alan,
think
did I do
about
that?
this.
Did I start arguing that
If
shit?
the courts rule, if the Court of Appeals rules that
because she was not going to listen to the normal
is not
shit.
contraband,
What?
and if the Court of Appeals rules that marijuana is not probable cause, how many less cases are going to be in the courts in general? Because how many cases start with, oh, I smelled weed. How do you prove the cop didn't smell weed when they found weed eventually in the car? Every judge will every time say,
A better
he
question
smelled it.
is,
we got now
how
pay us
many
fines, costs. You have to stay on probation. I won't just.
How
give
about
you
this?
jail.
Better question is, how many more rape kits will be able to be tested when the budget of the State Police Forensic Science Division is not using 50% of it to test marijuana because smell will not result in confiscations? There's got to be some other kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We don't need more crime. We don't need fucking giant courthouses and, as many judges and, everything that we have. We don't need it. But there are government... I just don't think the judges agree with me on that. They want
the
more
PC?
judges and to make more
All right,
money.
I mean, that's not... If that's what we're... Okay.
Bureaucracy's goal is to convince... the people who fund them, Congress, that they need more funding. And they say, oh, well, we got all this crime we got to deal with. How much crime starts at the inception with, I smelled weed?
60% of the budget for the Michigan State Forensic Science Division, or 40%.
So I think we got to do this legislatively or another way. I hope that we can convince judges to go along with what is clearly obvious, that marijuana has been authorized by Michigan and shouldn't be probable cause.
This is the
to
argument.
Lose your right from search and seizure. You lose your Fourth Amendment.
This is
by
the
being a
argument.
patient
This is
right
the
now.
argument, David. People versus Anthony Brown, the worst opinion ever, is justified by cop logic. But let's try to articulate what it is. It is something to the effect of, the MMA did not change the public health code in any way. Public health code still prohibits all this marijuana behavior. What the MMA did is it created limited categories for exclusive people that fall within this unambiguous compliance, and for them and them alone, immunity shall take place. Now, at no point in time did it...
Brown's worse than that. But
what?
Brown's worse than that, I think.
At no point in time do they address the conflict resolution of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which they did in People versus Kuhn, right, where they undid a driving...
With 7E.
That's what I'm saying, the conflict resolution portion of that, when they clearly conflict. And if the idea is that they can run consistent with one another, that's simply not true, because they don't. But if you're going to accept that kind of crazy talk for the own, ends justify the means kind of logic like the Federalists try to do, Shiloh, you're not listening, I know, then the MMAFLA is the end of times for that logic. Because who are the categorized people that are entitled to now possess it? It is a category beyond a limited category. It is a category that expands into a population by which there may not be a specific identifying characteristic for number one. And by authorizing that kind of behavior into a category of individuals beyond that, number one, it changes the dynamics of the individuals who could be lawfully in possession of it, not a limited group of people in possession of it for multiple different reasons, other than to treat a medical condition, which is a very limited reason. It's for revenue producing. And in doing so, the state of Michigan will be receiving revenue from this. Now, if the state of Michigan is licensing and receiving revenue from the selling of and contracting for the cultivating, manufacturing, processing, transporting, and testing of marijuana, then they are doing so for contraband or Schedule 1, meaning they are the basis by which the police can get into and seize property that justifies looking beyond the patient's authorization from the state is that marijuana remains Schedule 1 contraband per se. In other words, No one's allowed to possess it for any reasons. It might as well be